Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for If Walls Could Talk. I'm Jill Bloom, Group Publisher of Walls and Ceilings, and honored to be joined by Stephen Sears, the CEO of EIMA, the EIFS Industry Members Association, Trent, Cotney, partner with Adams and Reese, and Bill Egan, president of the Egan Group. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Well, Stephen, let's start with you. You've been the CEO of EIMA for just shy of 2 years. Can you tell everybody about yourself and how you landed as CEO of EIMA?
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Jill. I have been here for just shy of 2 years. I started in June of 2021, and I'm really excited to be here. I actually came by way of 16 and a half years at the Brick Industry Association in Reston, where I started off as a director of marketing and communications back in 2004 and ended up as the COO of charge of regions and local councils. And I did a lot of work on marketing, industry marketing and advertising, and statewide advocacy, and they called it masonry planning policy. So those are the two things that I concentrated on the last several years that I was at BIA. And I left there in September of 2020, and this opportunity came up, and there was a huge amount of overlap, and it just seemed like a great time to join EIMA and the EIFS industry, and I'm thrilled to be here. Before I was at BIA, I did work in Madison Avenue for quite some time as an account manager for various advertising agencies, and most recently I was at Ogilvy and Mather on the IBM software account for 5 years, and so I come at this with a bit of a marketing bent on one hand, but I did work in a presidential administration as well in the late 80s, so I kind of have the advocacy side too, and then I did get an MBA from Duke University. So kind of wrap it all up, it seems like this was a good place to come to when I did. So, and here we are.
And here we are. Well, I think that's fabulous. We're excited to welcome you to the industry. Well, sort of. I mean, it's been almost a couple of years now, but thank you for joining us. And Bill Egan, I mean, I think everybody knows you. You've been around for a while with your incredible technical knowledge. Tell us about you and what are you doing now, and what does everybody need to know about Bill Egan?
Sure. So I'd worked for a manufacturer of exterior insulation finish systems, stucco, and water-resistant barriers for almost 40 years in technical capacities. And I left there in April of 2019, started my own consulting business, the Bill Egan Group. So I focus on construction products and building enclosures, various aspects, litigation. I support manufacturers, and I do technical consulting for the EIFS Industry Members Association.
Well, that's fabulous. Thank you. Glad to have you here. Trent, I mean, you and I have known each other for many years now, almost 16, 17 years. But there is no doubt you are not the typical attorney that I've known or that people typically know. And I know that your passion is advocating for the contractor. But can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, just so they know who's Trent Cotney?
Sure. So I've been practicing for about 25 years or so, licensed in 9 different states. I'm a partner and a construction team leader for Adams and Reese, and I've got a background in construction. Grew up in a family of construction, did some drywall and demo in college. So pride myself on some real world knowledge. Also served as general counsel for a variety of trade associations. So look forward to our conversations today.
Yeah, well, let's dive in. Stephen, I'd like to start with you. I mean, there's clearly been some issues and some confusion around EIFS in New York City. Can you just give us some background? What is happening and what does everybody need to understand?
Sure. And Bill is going to help me with an assist here for sure. But what happened in New York City was that the building code, and it does change periodically. They have a regular schedule to update the building code. And the most recent one was updated and took effect in November of 2022. And it's a several-year process with many, many stakeholders. And I can tell you that the final product is 2,890 pages long. So it's an ambitious thing that they do. Many, many stakeholders were involved. But I think what happened, which is why we're interested in it, is that it changed how EIFS can be used and installed in New York City from the way it used to be. And that it's in some cases, it's made it more challenging and more difficult and potentially more costly. At the same time, I do want to say it's not a ban on EIFS. And I do want to just come out and say that immediately, that it's not a ban on EIFS, because our manufacturers have come up with solutions and product offerings that adhere to the new building code, but it does make it largely more challenging to use in many, many cases. And the issue I think we have with it is there's no real reason to do it. With the fire blocking specifics, I'm going to ask Bill to talk about. But one of the things about EIFS is that it does pass the NFPA 285 test. It has for decades. It was developed by the National Fire Protection Group, and that has had 100% success rate in the United States for building structures that are built in compliance with NFPA 285. There's never really been a facade fire. And we understand too, the fire safety is a paramount issue. With the horrific tragedies in fires around the world, we understand why solutions need to be found and made, and there's always ways to improve. But I think where we come down on this is that it should be a science-based and a fact-based conversation rather than an emotional one, which is a very, very hard thing to do. But with that, what I'd like to do is ask Bill if he could to kind of talk about the specifics of what those changes happen to be with the new code and what that could mean for the industry.
And let me just be clear, so this is only happening in New York City, correct?
That is correct at this
Okay.
time.
Bill?
Yep, sure. So I guess the first thing I wanted to make it a little bit clear is that this relates not just to EIFS, but to any kind of combustible material. So it affects, as an example, metal cladding that has combustible materials, brick that has combustible materials. But the thing we're here to talk about today is EIFS, since it does impact exterior insulation finish systems, which traditionally the systems have been around for 50 years now, and they primarily used expanded polystyrene as the insulation. The new requirements that have gone into effect in New York City really relate to the use of fire blocking, which typically is not used in EIFS assemblies. It's not required in EIFS assemblies because of being able to pass NFPA 285. The New York City requirements have now require prescriptively fire blocking in certain locations. And so what that does for EIFS is that it means you have to insert some sort of a non-combustible insulation, whether it be mineral wool or something similar, or in some cases, it changes the whole system. And some systems are going to strictly to mineral wool materials to get rid of the expanded polystyrene, or to change the expanded polystyrene. So the important thing for contractors is to understand that this is not a traditional EIFS system. There's going to be some changes, and they should understand what the building code requirements are and work with manufacturers to get systems that are code compliant in New York City.
Very nice. So what's the easiest way for contractors to know and understand how to make sure they're installing correctly?
I would say, well, first of all, to understand the requirements within New York City, but then to go with most of the manufacturers, the EIMA members are either, they have systems that address these requirements. They'd be knowledgeable as to, how to meet the requirements. Sure.
Bill, you're so technical. What was your first thought when you saw this come down on November 7th?
Well, it's been it's been discussed for quite a while. I was kind of surprised by it since NFPA 285 has been around for, I think, 30 something years, and in the International Building Code, they recognize NFPA 285, and there are not these prescriptive requirements. So I was kind of surprised to see it happened. It was driven a lot just by, individual jurisdictions can kind of, develop the requirements that they want, and New York City just decided to go to a different direction with these prescriptive requirements for fire blocking. So, Bill, can you just explain a little bit more about NFP 285? Sure. It's a multi-story fire test that is used to recognize combustible materials on non-combustible construction. And it's been around for, as I say, probably 35, maybe even longer than that, 35 years or so. And basically, it just shows that when you use a combustible material on a non-combustible construction, that you don't get lateral or horizontal flame spread. That's basically what it does in a nutshell, or a very simplistic view. Got it. And so for contractors they're dealing with this in New York City, how did we get here? What do they need to understand how they got here, and what's the workaround? Okay, so it got here because of, the New York City was just was undergoing the routine code changes that building codes go through. And through basically committee actions, they decided they wanted this prescriptive fire blocking. So the workaround or the way to comply with the new requirements is basically to go with a non-combustible insulation system, such as with mineral wool, and some manufacturers offer that. Or the alternative would be you can put in non-combustible fire blocking prescriptively per the building code. I would suggest that you consult with your manufacturers and see, what options they have to offer.
Sounds good. So Trent, when it comes to this legally, what do contractors need to understand that are managing through this and navigating these waters in New York City? What should they be doing, changing, adding to their contracts? What kind of insight can you give us legally?
Sure. So I think, the thing that contractors need to make sure they're doing is obviously check with manufacturer specifications and recommendations, work with the design professionals and consultants to make sure that they are compliant with the changes. And, I think we're going to see additional changes down the road, right? This is like many things that we see throughout the country. I don't necessarily understand the reasoning 100% as far as why that New York City took the approach that they did, but I think that as long as contractors work hand in hand downstream with manufacturers and upstream with architects and design professionals, that they should be fine contractually. The one thing they want to make sure that they're doing is that their scope matches whatever's required for that purpose. And more importantly, that their warranties are also in line with whatever the new requirements are. So those, I think, are the big things, at least right now.
Okay. And so, Stephen, question for you. What is EIMA doing to help support contractors through this?
Well, I mean, we're doing a couple of things. And one of the things I like to tell people is that we have an extremely close working relationship with the Association of the Wall and Ceiling Industry. In fact, we share office space with them, and we have for over 10 years. So we work with them hand in hand. We do have members in EIMA who are contractors, and through our new committee structure that we've a new governance structure that we put in place, we've informed them about what's going on. We've reached out to various contractor groups in New York City specifically to let them know what's going on about this, and to keep everybody informed. And that goes for both open shop and union contractor firms. We've kept both of those organizations apprised of what's going on, and we're taking a two-pronged approach on this. I mean, Bill talked a lot about the technical side, which is really, really important, and we have through a membership organization that we're a part of, we've reached out and liaisoned directly with the Department of Buildings in New York City about this. But we're also taking another approach as well, which is more of a climate approach. It's more of a sustainability approach, because one of the things that EIFS is a hallmark of EIFS is its sustainability capability. You just look at what the insulation in EIFS is about, and if you compare it to brick on a per inch basis, the expanded polystyrene has an R value that's close to 25 times greater than an inch of brick. So it's a very, very compelling argument. And RS Means certainly talks about it's a very cost competitive, especially in the commercial side. It's a very cost compelling wall system compared to other groups. But back to the environmental side, one of the quandaries that New York City is facing is when they passed Local Law 97 in 2019, that changed the landscape for how much more environmentally friendly the building environment and building stock in New York has to be. I mean, I'm just reading from their text here. This is from New York City's own website. The goal is to reduce the emissions produced by the city's largest buildings 40% by 2030 and 80% by 2050. And with those kinds of numbers, it clearly can't be a legacy building only play. It's got to be a modern building materials play too, which EIFS is a huge part of. So there's all of that going on with it, and we're letting people know. You know,
Yeah.
we've let the elected officials know, we've let other groups know that if New York City really is taking seriously local law 97, they're going to have to really find a way where EIFS and other materials in the foam plastic space can be a part of the solution, because otherwise it's going to be a bear to come close to meeting those goals.
Yeah, that sounds like lofty goals.
Yeah.
Well, EIMA does so much for the industry besides just this. Can you tell us a little bit more about EIMA, and if contractors are out there and they want to join, what do they need to know about EIMA?
Well, EIMA, I mean, we just got through with an EIMA 2.0 kind of recast, if you will. When I first came on board in June of 2021, I mean, it was kind of one of the things that I worked with the board on doing was, how can we fashion ourselves in a post-pandemic environment? And so we looked at the market data that we had. We looked at a lot of the industry statistics that we had, and it became pretty conclusive pretty quickly for an association our size that we would have to kind of really refocus what we were going to do and what we wanted to be if we were going to have an impact for the EIFS industry down the road. So we engaged in a very robust strategic planning process. We hired a really top-rated person here in the Washington, D.C. area who has decades of experience to doing that, and we did that. And in concert with that, we developed an overall strategic objective with 3 strategic initiatives underneath it, and we refashioned our working group structure to match those strategic objectives as well. So everything is much more lockstep, if you will, because one of the things that we wanted to do was, I call it connect the dots. So what I mean by that is, what I wanted to do was have the strategic initiatives addressed by the board, addressed by the working groups that are connected to the board. Because right now, one of the things that we have is that we have a board, at least one board member as a co-chair of each working group. So there is that linkage that we think is really important. And we're excited about it. I mean, now it's a great time. The members are really excited about it. So that also kind of changed how we did our recent board meetings, because in the past we had a board meeting sort of in the fourth quarter where it was just the board of directors and EIMA staff, and that was it. This time we had over 50 people because we had the new working groups meet, the board met, and all of that. So it's exciting. We redid the due structure as well, because we realized that we need to have more resources if we want to do more. But I think the thing that gets everybody in our industry excited is that with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, which is after what New York City did with Local Law 97, and now that people are starting to take kind of climate change and the built environment and what it can do to help solve the climate change issue, because buildings have such a huge role in carbon emissions, something like 40%.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something like that. Now is a wonderful time to be in the EIFS industry. But what we did all this to set us up for future success. So we encourage our contractors to join EIMA. We actually and we have a contractor on the board. He's a co-chair of Mike Cheney of James River Exteriors. He is a co-chair of our workforce education and development working group, which is totally tied to our workforce development and education initiative. And there's a lot they can do, because the other thing that we noticed too, for all of this to work, everybody's got to be rowing in the same direction. And it's got to be from advocacy, it's got to be from the building code side, it's got to be from the promotional side, and frankly, the installation and contracting side as well.
Sounds great. Well, I've been doing this for 24 years, knowing that, associations are great for everybody, and the people that get involved, it's really life-changing. And it's really amazing to see the relationships. But Bill, real quick, tell me, what has EIMA meant to you over the years?
Wow, I started with EIMA back in the early '80s, believe it or not. So I mean, I remember the days when people didn't even know what EIFS was, and they were sticking pencils through it and everything else, and trying to downgrade it. And there were no standards; there weren't in the building codes. So we went from, and it really wasn't much market acceptance. You had to explain to people what it was, and then we went from that and started developing standards in the '80s. And finally got into the building code in 2009, I believe, and really has just grown up unbelievably. So it's been a great career for me. I really enjoy it, and I still like doing it. So
Sounds great. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. But before we go, Stephen and Bill, if anyone has any questions for EIMA, what's the website and where do they go to find more?
Go to EIMA.com, EIMA.com. And I would also recommend that people follow EIMA on LinkedIn, especially. I think we have a very deliberately active presence on LinkedIn. And we have a trade show coming up April 26th and 27th in Palm Springs, California. And we're excited about it. So, and we encourage people to participate in the industry. And we're thrilled that we just got a new manufacturer member at the beginning of the year. That's significant for us. So ADEX Systems from Canada will be joining Drive It, Master Builders, Master Wall, Parex, and Stoke Corp as manufacturer members of EIMA. So we're really excited about the momentum that's being built and moving ahead.
Oh, that's exciting. Congratulations. And Trent, if anybody has any questions from you from a legal perspective, how do they get a hold of you?
Sure, they can just email me, trent.cotney@arlaw.com.
Sounds great. And if anybody has any questions for us, it's wconline.com. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for all our free content, our website, our e-news, our e-magazine, so you can stay up to date with all our great videos and podcasts and interviews we're doing today. And most importantly, stay safe and healthy. And we can't wait to talk to everyone again soon. Thanks again, gentlemen.